The sky over the city was a bruised purple, weeping a fine, persistent rain that turned the skyscrapers into smudges of gray light. Alara Vance stood in her corner office on the 50th floor, Quinn surveying her diamond-dusted kingdom, the world silenced by triple-paned glass. Her reflection was a portrait of perfected ambition, a sharp black bob, a tailored white sheath dress, an expression polished to a cool, impenetrable sheen. Vance Holdings was her life, her sanctuary, her soul poured into steel and stock options. There was no room for anything as messy as sentiment. A soft, hesitant knock on her office door was an anomaly. Her assistant, David, knew better than to interrupt her final moments of solitude before the quarterly review. "Enter," she said, her voice cool and measured. David stood there, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Ms. Vance, I'm so sorry to disturb you, but there's a child here." Lara's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "A child? Is this a PR stunt I wasn't informed of?" "No, ma'am. She just wandered in from the lobby. Security is downstairs, but she was very quick. She's asking for you." Before Alara could form a cutting reply, a small figure slipped past David's legs. She was a wisp of a thing, no more than 6 or 7, drowned in a faded, threadbare yellow raincoat. Her hair, dark and wet, clung to her cheeks. But it was her eyes that arrested Elleride, the color of dark honey, and filled with a sorrow so profound it seemed to swallow the light in the room. The little girl clutched a small, bedraggled teddy bear in one hand. She took 2 tentative steps onto the plush ivory carpet, her worn-out sneakers leaving tiny, damp prints. "Are you the lady boss?" the girl whispered, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. Ilara felt a strange, unwelcome tightening in her chest. She was a strategist, a negotiator. She dealt in billions, not in lost children. "I am Ms. Vance, and you are in a place you shouldn't be." The girl's lower lip trembled. "My name is Lily." She took a deep, shaky breath, as if gathering all the courage in her tiny body. "I don't have a mama." The words, simple and stark, hung in the air. Alara's own heart, a muscle she'd long considered atrophied, gave a single, painful thud. She clutched the edge of her desk, her knuckles turning white. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Hello, Lee," she said, her tone deliberately neutral, a shield against the sudden, strange onslaught of emotion. "But David will help you find security. They'll take you to someone who can help." Tears welled in Lily's honey-colored eyes, but they didn't fall. She looked directly at Alara, a plea so raw it was almost physical. "The other kids at the home, they get visitors' day. They get to spend a day with their mamas. I don't have anyone." She took another step forward, her small voice breaking. "I don't have mama. Can I spend a day with you, ma'am? Just one day. I can be very good. I promise." The silence that followed was deafening. David looked stricken. Ilara felt the world tilt on its axis. This wasn't in any business plan. This was a vulnerability, a chaos she had spent a lifetime building walls against. She thought of the review meeting, the investors waiting, the pristine order of her schedule. Every rational fiber of her being screamed to call security, to have this disruption removed. But she looked at Lily. She saw the desperate hope warring with the certainty of rejection in her eyes. And in that moment, Alara Vance, the titan of industry, did something utterly illogical. She knelt. The simple act brought her eye level with the child. The ivory carpet was cold against her knees. She could smell the faint scent of rain and cheap strawberry shampoo a day. Ilara heard herself say, her voice softer than it had been in years, "What would we do?" Lily's face lit up with a tentative, breathtaking hope. We could have pancakes with lots of syrup and maybe go to the park. And you could hold my hand?" Each request was a tiny dagger. They were so simple, so achingly mundane. They were the things Alara had traded for corner offices and corporate takeovers. A memory, long buried, surfaced herself at 8, alone in a sterile mansion. Wishing for just 5 minutes of her mother's time before another charity gala, "Ms. Vance," David interjected softly, the quarterly review. Ilara didn't look away from Lily. "Cancel it." David's jaw dropped. "Cancel it?" "Ma'am, the board. Tell them a more pressing acquisition came up, she said, her gaze still locked with the little girl's. Tell them anything. She slowly reached out a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Lily's small, cold fingers slipped into hers. It was a tiny anchor in a suddenly unmoored world. The day that followed was the most surreal of Alara's life. They went to a diner she hadn't set foot in since her college days. Lily ordered a stack of pancakes so large it obscured her face, and she poured a river of maple syrup over them, her eyes wide with delight. Alara, who normally subsisted on kale salads and espresso, found herself taking a bite from the fork Lily offered. It was sickeningly sweet, and yet it tasted like a memory she'd never had. They're good, right? Lily asked, syrup glistening on her chin. They're perfect, Alara replied, and to her shock, she meant it. They went to the park. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. Lily ran on the damp grass, chasing pigeons. Her laughter a sound so pure it seemed to fracture the icy shell around Alara's heart. She dragged Alara onto the swings, and for the first time in 20 years, Alara Vance felt the wind in her hair. Not from the open window of a limousine, but from the simple, joyful arc of a swing. She held Lily's hand as they walked. The small, trusting grip was a weight she never knew she craved. Lily chattered about her storybooks, about her friends at the children's home, about how she wished for a cat. Alara listened, truly listened, and found herself sharing little things in return, the name of her first pet, her favorite color blue. Like the ocean, she never had time to visit. As the afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows, they found a quiet bench. Lily leaned against her, her small body warm and heavy with exhaustion. Alara tentatively put an arm around her, and the child snuggled closer. A perfect, trusting fit. This was the moment the fissure in Alara's heart became a chasm. The sterile, ordered life she had built felt like a gilded cage. This simple, profound connection was what was missing. The corporate victories, the soaring stocks, felt like dust and ashes compared to the weight of this sleeping child against her side. Lily, she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion she could no longer deny. You shouldn't have to go back to the home, Lily stirred, looking up at her with sleepy, hopeful eyes. I have a big, quiet house, Alara continued, the plan forming in her mind with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to a merger. It has a garden. We could get a cat. You could have your own room filled with books and toys. She took a deep breath, the most terrifying and exhilarating of her life. What if I became your mama? Lily's eyes widened, filling with fresh tears, but these were of pure, unadulterated joy. She threw her small arms around Alara's neck, holding on tightly. Really? You'd be my mama? Really? Alara said, the word a vow. She would move heaven and earth. She would hire the best lawyers, bulldoze through the bureaucracy. This child was hers. They returned to Alara's penthouse as the city lights began to twinkle below. Lily was asleep in her arms, having dozed off in the car. Alara laid her gently on the vast, pristine sofa in the living room, tucking a cashmere throw around her. She couldn't stop looking at her, the dark lashes against pale cheeks, the peaceful expression. Her daughter. It was then she noticed the small, crumpled piece of paper that had fallen from the pocket of Lily's raincoat. Thinking it might be a drawing or a note from the home, Alara picked it up and smoothed it out. It wasn't a drawing. It was a worn, creased photograph, printed on standard copy paper. It was a picture of her, Alara Vance, taken from a corporate magazine profile years ago. And scrawled in a familiar, looping handwriting at the bottom were instructions. Her name is Alara Vance. Find her. Be sweet. Be brave. Tell her you have no mother. Do this, and you will have your medicine. Mom, the world stopped. The air vanished from Alara's lungs. The penthouse, her sanctuary, suddenly felt like a vacuum. She stared at the note, the words burning into her retinas. Mom, her eyes, wide with dawning horror, slowly traveled from the note to the sleeping child on her sofa. The dark hair, the honey-colored eyes, a face that had always tugged at a deep, hidden part of her memory. And then, the final, devastating piece of the puzzle clicked into place. That handwriting. She hadn't seen it in over a decade, but she would recognize it anywhere. It belonged to Isabella, her former personal assistant, the brilliant, fiercely devoted woman who had been with her from the start, who had known her better than anyone. The woman she had been forced to fire in a brutal corporate downsizing, a decision that had haunted her. Isabella, who had a young daughter she'd sometimes spoken of with quiet love. Isabella, who had vanished from her life. Lily wasn't a random orphan. She was Isabella's daughter. Her mother was very much alive. This entire day had a heartbreaking plea, the vulnerability. The shared moments of tenderness had been a carefully orchestrated script. A performance engineered by a desperate, perhaps vengeful, woman to exploit the one vulnerability Alara never knew she had. Alara's legs gave way. She crumpled to the floor, the photograph fluttering from her numb fingers. She looked at the trusting, innocent face of the little girl she had, for one glorious soul-shattering day, believed could be hers. The child was both a pawn and a weapon. The twist of the knife wasn't just the betrayal or the cruel manipulation. It was the realization that the love she had felt, the profound, instantaneous connection that had felt more real than anything in her life, had been real for her, and it had been used as a tool to break her. She had acquired the one thing she truly wanted, only to discover it was a hostile takeover of her own heart. And as she knelt there on the cold marble floor, the silent, gut-wrenching sobs finally came. Mourning not just the loss of a daughter, but the death of the dream itself, poisoned at its very root.